Hello and welcome to At the 55, your home for U Sports football. Me and Tom are back on the mics with our new installment of the exit meeting. We are finally in playoff team territory, and this one is near and dear to both Tom and my hearts, more so on my end because of the nature of the guest we have, and Tom's because, well, shoot, Tom, let me just hand you the mic. So how the heck you doing, my friend?
Oh man, I could not be doing any better when we've got not only a fantastic human being here, but a five-time Yates Cup champion, a Vanier Cup champion, and a gold medal winner with Team Ontario in 2024. New defensive coordinator from the McMaster Marauders, Adam Grandy, joins us here. Coach, how you doing, sir?
Wow, thanks, Tom. That's an entrance. I need you to follow me around to various spots, and you can be my intro man wherever I go now. To be
I'd
honest, I
love
don't
to.
even think I counted the amount of Yates and stuff. That's pretty cool. No, thanks so much for having me, guys. Obviously, it's pretty fun getting on here. Haven't had known you guys for so long. Coach Zach at Guelph, and obviously Coach Tom Burlington Stampeders, and again, thank you guys so much for everything you guys do for football and helping grow the sport. So my pleasure to be on.
Well, it's great having you on, Coach. And obviously, with Tom covering those five Yates Cups, that spans your time going back to as a player with Mac and with the Burlington connection being from the area. And we'll get into all of that. But I want to actually start with the program you're leaving with Western, just from the standpoint that we're right in the midst of combine season. At time of recording, the invitational combine had wrapped up about a week ago. I was there. Me and Tom will be on a pod soon, kind of giving you sort of the thoughts of being there. The Nationals coming up soon, draft season's right around the corner. And from the Western standpoint, especially with that defense, obviously, you had some of those returning fifth year guys like Richard Adu before and Max Nixon, who were so essential for that defense for pretty well your tenure there. But then thinking about obviously a guy like Riley McLeod, who's going to be at the National, Soren Hallschmidt, who is at the Invitational, didn't get the call up, Von Muhldorfer, our guy, and Eric Anderson. Sorry to get over to the offensive side there for a little bit. Just talk about like some of these guys that you've had the ability to work with, and like what a stellar defense that you've been able to. And Jackson Finley, sorry, like our favorite player in all of Canada. My
Mhm.
apologies to the Finley clan out in BC. Some of these guys that are getting this opportunity to take that next step to the CFL, who you've had to work with, like what's that been like working with some of those names?
Um, it's awesome when you go through that whole list and it really kind of makes you think of, all your experiences with them and to kind of see their growth and development. And I remember, seeing Jackson when he first got onto campus and because that was the COVID recruitment and I'm like, I didn't know he was gonna be that tall. And like how young he was and how, in his first year, like he didn't want to speak and make the checks in the back end and now, arguably, one of the most talented players I think I'll ever coach. And it was really special being part of that group and really special kind of going through with that recruitment cycle and seeing the development of like Richard Adu before, seeing, where he came from and again, how much he matured and grew up through the process there. And obviously, and Teachers College is going to be an amazing teacher whenever he's done playing football. It's all very special to see, Soren, the amount of hard work he had to put in and then had an amazing season last year and a well-deserved combine invite. Um, Shoot, it's so many names to kind of go through, and you kind of think of the experiences, and it's just it's a special spot. It's a special spot, and it was a really special time, and so grateful and appreciative of my time there. Like Riley McLeod, I recruited Riley out of high school. Has been the leader of that defense for the past couple of years and arguably team. How he manages to function as an engineer, an academic all Canadian, not missing a workout, not missing a practice. Like it's special to see, and I'm so happy for those guys' developments. I'm sorry, Zach, I probably missed a few guys there, but just trying to go off of the list you gave me there. I'm excited to see how they do at the national combine, and I know for sure they'll be because they're successful whenever they're done playing football too, because they're outstanding humans.
Well, you talk about the outstanding capabilities that these guys have off the field, but you could certainly do a hell of a job recruiting these guys on the field, and not just at Western, but even at your time at Guelph as well. I mean, just sticking with some of the linebackers there, you've got John Rush, you got Lucas Coral, Job Reinhardt, you've got obviously Riley McLeod, Lowers Bowers Kane. Like, you've been surrounded by some outstanding defensive players, or excuse me, linebackers in general here. Obviously, the entirety of the defenses that you've kind of been around. My question's kind of more so around the recruiting and development side of things here. Part one, what do you look for in, let's say, a linebacker that you think he's got qualities that could transition into the next level from the high school? And then two, what do you do to really develop them in order to be these great linebackers that you've coached all Canadians at, both of your stints in Guelph and at Western?
Yeah, no, it's a tough question because I think there's a lot that probably goes into the evaluation of any players. And I think specifically when you look at linebacker play, ultimately you have to find someone who can make tackles because at the end of the day, it's our job to get the ball carrier on the ground. And then, guys who are successful at it, they usually end in a win. And when we talk about ending a win, like we want to see the ball carrier moving backwards. So I think that obviously is the main part in any type of evaluation. And then obviously you kind of go through the rest of, everyone wants to be big, strong, fast, violent, uh, be able to move, all those type of things I think have to hit their check marks there. But then it's a matter of, I think finding and identifying intrinsic skills, like is this person going to be a hard worker? How well does this person understand the game? Because, I think the connotation when you think a linebacker is meathead, and I've coached some, and but some have been, what I think you would call that, but they see the game very well. I think that's a very important piece to it as well. And I think kind of where I try to help them out with their journeys is help them understand the big picture, not necessarily just their job. And you're one of 12 guys on the defense, and everyone's got to do their job, and understanding where your help is. I think those are important pieces in their development piece of it as well there too. So I think, when I look at, linebackers, I think you got to start with kind of some of those checklists that I kind of talked about, and then it's on the coaching staff, I think, to help bring them along with their journey. And I said I think I've just been so thankful to be around a number of guys that, work their butts off. I think that's if you go up and down the list there, I think work ethic is kind of high up on all those guys in terms of willing to put the extra work in, and be ultra competitive. I think I'm very blessed to have been around such a great group of linebackers.
And coach, building off that, when you think of your role as a defensive coordinator with the recruiting piece, we were talking about this with your friend, former colleague, and Coach McNeil, as that piece on matching the recruit to the system and the system to the players that are there already. You obviously were able to be the defensive coordinator in Guelph in that post Stu Lang era. Your time working with McNeil and under Coach Gleason at Western. I certainly want to ask you about Scott Brady, who you're filling in for at Mac. But just building off of that, when you're thinking about running a system, and even more so in this case, coming in, bringing a system in for the first time, what's your thought process in finding talent that works in the things you want to do, or is it just talent first and you'll make the system work around it?
Yeah, no, I think when you're put in charge of overseeing a defense, I think you very much have to figure out what is the strength of your team, and what can your guys do. I think it'd be unfair of me as a coach to ask them to do something they can't do because that's what the system says they should do. You know, thousand different ways to skin a cat. So I think, I think if you're doing your job well as a coach, you're able to identify, I think, your players' strengths and weaknesses, and ultimately try to tailor the system to what they're good at. So I think everyone has kind of their background set, in terms of like a system. You're going to kind of coach, I think, what you know best, just because it kind of gives you the answers. But I think in that journey, I think it's important that you make sure that you have answers for things, because there's so many great offensive coordinators in our conference, in our country, that you're going to be going up against. I think it's important to have answers for that, but more importantly, answers that your players can execute. Because at the end of the day, You can drop a perfect play or anything on the whiteboard. If you don't have guys that can execute it, it really doesn't matter. So I think that's probably a super important piece, I think, too, and something I think that all the coordinators I've worked with demonstrate. Kevin McNeil, uh, when he was the DC at Guelph, Paul Gleason certainly as the DC at Western. I think they very much know what their players can and can't do, and how to best call the game or put in a game plan that helps show their strengths. And I think that's definitely something that we'll be looking to do at McMaster going forward as well.
God, it's still so great to hear you say you're going to be at McMaster, man. I'm still so damn excited, both as an alum and as a fan of the game, just in general here. Now, I am interested because obviously you've had experience both at Guelph and both at Western, understanding this McMaster team, and it's certainly, game planning for this McMaster team going forward here, and certainly seeing the unbelievable arm strength that Keegan has and what that offense can do. I'm wondering, when you're walking into this and when you're coming into a McMaster game, even as early as last year, how are you preparing for that? Obviously, understanding that Mac for the past couple of years hasn't had the strongest run game, but you can't just say, oh, we're not going to worry about the run whatsoever. But coming into seeing a Keegan Hall type, seeing a guy that can throw the ball pretty comfortably 50 to 60 times a game, what does
Yeah.
that game process kind of look like? How are you getting your guys prepped for something like that?
Well, I think it's important, as much as we want to, dominate every aspect defensively, and do as best we can achieve our goals. I think it's important to play complementary football. So I think it's important that we as a coaching staff, myself, know kind of what offensively are going to be doing. And I think that's going to affect our game plan defensively, So if we are, effectively throwing the football all around the park there, we have to make sure defensively, our game plan, I think, has to match that, right? In terms of, yeah, if we're able to throw that much and be a quick strike team, yeah, maybe we can be a bit more aggressive on defense, knowing that, we're humming on offense there. Whereas opposed to, if we're going to be a bit more conservative, well, maybe that kind of almost has to match as well too, because you don't want to be, ultra aggressive defensively when your offensive game plan is conservative, and then that's a way you can potentially lose the game. So again, it sounds related because I think it is. It's about knowing who your team is, and I think that kind of helps build and take the direction I think you need to go in your game plan as well, and understanding, what's the offense going to do, what's our, special teams dynamic, how is that going to affect things? Because I think all ultimately affects, I think, the game plan defensively.
Mhm.
Kind of going to that piece on the scouting, Mac, from your time most recently at Western, beyond who's been on the field, what are some of your insights into Coach Hopkins as an offensive coordinator? Because he's relatively new in his tenure there. And as we've been talking about, a coordinator is a part of what they bring to the table, but also reconciling that with the pieces on the board. Sort of in a vacuum, like what would be your synopsis of what Coach Hopkins tries to do offensively? Kind of again, putting aside who he has available to make it work with what he does. Like, what would you kind of define as his style as an offensive mind?
Yeah, and I think, well, and just it's funny because we don't start practice till next week, so really haven't got a chance to go up against them in practice. But obviously going and game planning for them when I was at Western, you can definitely see, Coach Hoppy put a bit of his stamp within the offense there. Obviously relying on his talents in terms of Keegan doing a great job and a great set of receivers. And I think a run game that was kind of getting going, and have a younger, talented running backs there too. So. I think Coach Hoppy does a great job of understanding and hearing ideas as well. So even though Hop calls the plays, like you can still see elements of Coach Patask's offense within there. You still see elements of, Jamie Barisi's the quarterback coach, and he's forgotten more about football than I'll ever know. But there's elements of what he brings to the table too. So I think, I think Hop does a good job of taking in the ideas from a very talented offensive staff and helping go forward. And I think, he Coach Hop's a former offensive lineman, so making sure that group gets taken care of and well coached is obviously a priority of his too. But he's constantly engaging all the levels of the offense as well there too. Like I see him meeting with receivers all the time, meeting with the quarterbacks. Obviously, that relationship has to be very important as well there too. So, and to be honest, guys, I think it's still something that he's figuring out too. And that's the thing. I think. When I first became a coordinator at Guelph, I think you don't know until you're in it and you're like, okay, there's a lot that goes into this right now, even though I've been a coordinator at the high school level, at the summer football level, all that kind of stuff. But once you're going up against OUA coordinators, who are paying their mortgages with the game plan, like things get real there, right? So it's now just, I think he's kind of figuring out, where he wants to go offensively as well there too. So I'm excited to kind of see his journey with it as well there too. And whatever, even though I'm a defensive guy, whatever elements I can do to kind of help assist with that in terms of what I've seen be successful. Obviously, coming from a very successful offensive program, in Western, obviously being under great offensive coordinators when I was at Guelph there too with Coach Jonka and Coach Galloway. So whatever I can do to help Coach Hopkins, I'll be willing to do. But I think he's still figuring it out on his end there too. But I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, certainly excited to see Coach Hopkins and his development here. I think even with his first couple of seasons as the offensive coordinator, I've really liked some of the play calling that's gone into this. And while, yes, you are leaning on your outstanding players that you have certainly in the receiving side of things and the quarterback side, that he's not giving up on the run. He's not giving up on anything else. He's just leaning to what his strengths are. And I certainly looking forward to how that continues to grow. But sticking with yourself here, obviously, we can get into the actual players and the depth into that as things are kind of coming up here. But I'm really curious because, as you mentioned, I don't think that you've had a real opportunity to see your defense as of yet, as the coach that's here, anyways. You're getting into camp as of next week in spring camp. What's your mindset going into that as a new defensive coordinator? Are you coming in saying, okay, throw out everything that you've learned before? Here's a new defensive strategy. Are you leaning on some of the basics of what Coach Brady had in his defense? Like, what's your kind of mindset going in there to put your defense in play with this team?
Yeah, and it's a challenging thing, and I think it's obviously, Coach Brady did such a great job with the defense there. So I think it's important to kind of assess, look at, how they did things because, like I said, like I have tons of respect for Coach Brady. I think he did an outstanding job with the defense while here at McMaster. So, and trying to meet with some of the vets and the players on the team, just try to get a sense of what would they like to continue going forward with what Coach Brady did, what are some things we can maybe tweak. And then obviously I want to put my element of there as well. So I think when we go into spring camp, for me, a lot of it I think will be on just player evaluation and try to figure out, what are guys capable of and what spots should we potentially play them at if we're going to move spots, and then almost have it organically kind of grow in terms of, we're gonna install slowly there and kind of, assess what the guys can do, and then basically as we see success within that system, or if we need to be tweaks to it, there'll be evolutions to it as well. So I think it's a bit of a combination of, you know, figuring out what guys can do, I think, and that's going to help kind of shift me to where I think schematically the defense needs to go. So that's why I'm very excited to get, back on the field there too. But definitely, I think it's always easier when you take some carryover from the previous coordinator, especially when he's been as successful as I think Coach Brady has. I'm sure guys will see some elements of that in the fall. But like I said, I'm still trying to figure that out myself there too. And that's what the awesome part about spring camp is. So.
And so maybe this question is somewhat of a moot point based on what you were just saying there. But like when you look at some of the names on this defense, like there are some standout names kind of going to that part of, what Coach Brady did that me and Tom are in unison, like was a standout job and the numbers back that up. But also seeing names like veteran names, guys that, it's always tough with OUA rosters to really know when a guy's coming back or not. But just as far as the veteran names, like guys like Josh Cumber and Drake Bodie and Carter Bladd and Mitch Price and some of these guys that have, especially in the case of Josh Cumber, bridged the gap even to that Yates Cup year in 2019, and who are just names that are known because of their contributions on the field, separate from the system and everything like that. and then it goes deeper than that, guys, in that sort of fourth, fifth year territory. Is there almost, and so again, not knowing entirely their status, no doubt you'd love to have a couple, if not all, those names back. Is there almost something nice though of if the team leans a little younger coming in, so you kind of know these guys are kind of getting their feet wet with the system that you're installing? I mean, again, not that you would ever reject the idea of getting a Josh Cumber in the secondary or that linebacking core, but if it does lean a little younger, which again, it's almost hard to tell at this point, and maybe it's moot. Is there benefit in that coming in with young guys, just knowing that hey, this year might be learning, but in a year and especially 2 years, it's like we are all speaking the same language.
Yeah, yeah, and I think um, the nice thing is everyone's starting on the ground floor right now, right? So like as great as it is to have veterans back, and I do think that having older players is a huge benefit to a football team, just having guys that are older, a bit more mature. We also have, I think, some very talented younger guys on our roster. Guys that are in their second, guys in their third year that are kind of, I think, chomping at the bit to take a step forward there too. And like I said, the nice thing is everyone's on the ground floor, even to the recruits we're talking about right now, is you guys get the opportunity to, we're all learning at the same pace right now too, right? So, um, like I said, it is nice to have the younger guys there too, but at the same point, I think it's good that we will have a balance of, I think, vets and younger guys involved with the defense there too. But I get what you're saying in terms of, you know, maybe the younger guys don't have habits or anything right now, but I think and especially piggybacking on the great job that Coach Brady did, I think we'll be in good shape with the up year guys that I think they just want to win. So they'll kind of do whatever it takes to win there too, but definitely excited to work with some of our younger guys that I believe are capable to push to get on the field there.
Yeah, and obviously we mentioned a few of the really impactful names on that defense, but you got other guys, especially in that secondary, Johan Chimbalonga, Demetrius Masuka, who I think are really going to step up into some of those more leadership roles as they continue to kind of grow in their setting there. So once again, I'm very, very excited for what this is going to potentially look like here and to really come out. But one of the other things that I've noticed here, and not to say that it's fallen off by any means, but I'm really excited about you coming back from a recruiting standpoint as well, and to really just come in and add that extra layer of not just being, a fantastic human being like Zach and I both know, but being a hell of a recruiter and living in, this area, being a part of this, because if you can own, I've said this a couple of times, if you can own the Hamilton region as McMaster, you're fighting for Yates Cups pretty consistently here. And so to have that capability and to have that great football town in your backyard, is there some excitement from that standpoint, from a recruiting standpoint, coming to McMaster and kind of being in this almost a hub where you've got London an hour away, you've got Hamilton right where you are, you've got the Kitchener-Waterloo area an hour away, which are all pretty strong areas to find quality talent?
Yeah, no, it's exciting. It's exciting just because of all my roots in Hamilton,
Mm.
Burlington area, right? Like grew up in Burlington. I'm in Robinson High School. Coach Burlington Stampeders for like 12 years or so, and then went on to coach in the HFA for the Hamilton Junior Ticats. So that's exciting getting back home and having the connections, because I still am friends with all those high school coaches, all those community coaches. So that's great there too. But you're certainly right, Tom. I think in terms of a recruitment standpoint, that's the lifeblood of the program. And I think Hamilton is one of, if not the best football cities in the province and in the country. So making sure that we do a great job recruiting Hamilton will be an absolute priority of mine in terms of we want to make sure the best talent stays in Hamilton. I think when you saw Mac be at its most successful, like the years you were there, and even in the early 2000s, they did a great job making sure that the best players in Hamilton and the Hamilton area too, like Burlington, Niagara,
Mhm.
all those kids came to Mac. So that'll be a huge emphasis, and obviously making sure we do well and other great towns like London, outstanding football town as well, making sure we recruit well there, and then kind of figuring out where we need to fill in from across Ontario and across the country as well to make us be the most competitive product that we can possibly put together on the football field there.
And Coach, not to this is the way I'm going to frame this. I don't mean to maybe make you feel old by any means, but you've been involved with OUA football now for this century. You've been around the game, and right. And but I asked that partly to poke fun at you a little bit. I can see the gray popping out there in the beard. You're not hiding it. You're proud
Can
of
we,
it.
is there a filter on Zoom?
We'll fix it
Is
in
that what
post,
brought this
Coach.
up, Zach?
But aside from poking a little fun at you, obviously, with it being 2025, me and Tom have had a number of discussions in the context of, what are some of the better teams of this 25 years, the better players and things of that nature. And we always end up coming back around to however you split it. The football right now, and I think it involves the coaching as well, 1 through 11 in the OUA and player wise is darn near as good as at least in Tom and my time sort of in the last 15, 16 years being involved with it that we've ever seen. You can argue about top town or whatever, but across the board. And I think a lot of the frustration, and not to speak for Tom as the alumni, with some Mac folks has been that you look and this team has been really good, but maybe not quite hitting the level that people expect. And when you're at school with the reputation of Mac, those expectations run high. You're coming from a program right now where you can win a Yates Cup and people will still say you failed in a year. But I'm more interested in the piece, in the question I'm asking is more from that standpoint of the parity that we're seeing where teams, and we just had this conversation talking about Carleton, where like things can get not bad, but like you can have all the talent, and if things aren't clicking right away, all of a sudden, like there's another team just chomping at your heels to knock you off. From our standpoint, I think it's a great thing because obviously the health of the league is great and it makes it fun to cover. I'm just curious from your standpoint, from your time with Western and Guelph as a player with Mac and going into the position you are now, does the OUA feel like it's in perhaps as strong a position as we've seen in some time? Or I'm just curious your take on that in general.
Yeah, no, I think you're bang on, Zach. Like, I think, and now you're making me date myself, like going back all the years that I've been a part of OUA football is, yeah, like all 11 teams are putting resources into football. Like, they're growing their staffs. Whereas I think if you look back 15, 20 years ago, you're probably just seeing 1 to 2 full-time staffers per school. And now I think if you don't have 4, you're kind of behind the curve, right? So I think universities are doing a great job investing in their football programs. And like if you look top, like it's a small coaching fraternity. Like I know basically coaches at all the schools there. We all know each other, all great guys. Everyone's working at it. Everyone is ultra competitive. They want to do well, and that's why you see typical teams that maybe. I think if you were to ask any type of random OUA alumni from 10 years ago, like traditional teams that maybe aren't as successful, are now getting recruiting wins. They're getting wins on the field. And like every single week in our season, it's going to be a war of some sort. Like every game's going to be a game there too. And to be honest, even you feel that at Western. I know the results were the results, but at no point did we go into any game thinking that this is a gimme game. Like we had to show up, and that was an important piece to it, and something you always kind of stress to players. But I definitely think the football's in a great spot right now in terms of all the universities are working their butts off recruiting and getting after it. And I think it's kind of led to a lot of great football product they see in the fall. But you definitely kind of see, I think, just the investment in it from a university standpoint, I think has helped kind of fuel that development there.
Yeah, and certainly as two guys who are very passionate about U Sports football and the OUA in general, it's been great to see the growth of the game, albeit it's a little bit slower than what Zach and I would like, but still to see the growth and to see it going to where we think it's going is something that we're both really excited about. The question that I have for you is, I don't quite know if you can quantify it, but I'd still love to hear your take. Some of the real frustrating parts for myself being a McMaster fan and an alumni, obviously, is in the past few years, there's been a lot of what we call as these jump ball moments where there's an opportunity for a game to sway in either direction. And a lot of those times that game has felt like it's swayed against McMaster. I feel like this year we finally got a lot of those going forward. I mean, you look at the Carleton game in the dying seconds into that, and Mac comes away with it. Obviously, the Waterloo game that goes into overtime, even going back into the Queens game in the week too. I mean, if not for a fumble going into the last drive of the game, there's a real possibility that they potentially go in there and win. But to get back into 4-4 and to get back into the playoffs is something that we're really excited about. Obviously, you've had a lot of experience as a coach, as a defensive coordinator, but as a head coach as well in some of those Burlington Stampeder days. And obviously, like I mentioned previously, as a head coach for Team Ontario and winning a damn gold medal this past year, which is a pretty damn cool thing to add to the resume here. In your mind, what is that factor that really helps get a team over the hump in some of those tight areas where, there's something that's happening, it's a tight game? What is that it factor that helps you become a good team to a great team?
Yeah, and that's I guess it's tough to quantify, Tom. Like it's just one of those things that unfortunately for some teams you got to learn by having some teachable moments, some rough experiences there, and just the important thing is having the mental resiliency to come back and be stronger and learn from those mistakes there too. Like I know I guess kind of a similar example would be kind of how Guelph was, I think, in like the early 2010s. And you kind of look at, struggled in 2011. And then, I think because of the struggles probably in 2011 led to us in 2012 going to 7-1 and then banging off 4-7. But I think whenever you kind of achieve success, it's usually because you've learned some good lessons and you've gotten better. I think very rarely do you just plop in and things work out for you. I think that there needs to be learning and overcoming of some adversity. I think that in itself develops mental toughness. And ultimately, I think when you're going to have those jump ball or 50-50s, whatever you want to call those scenarios where, it's a make or break moment, I think the mentally tougher team that has gone through adversity more times than not will come away with the W on that. Now, the game's the game, and sometimes luck is not on your side there, but I think that's probably the main thing I think that kind of separates or divides that is like what team is mentally tougher, all things being equal. I think and just continues to be mentally tough. I think that's how you have to develop and how you have to carry forward and be and see those successes there.
Now, Coach, we've been talking a lot around the idea of coaching philosophy and styles and everything of this nature, and we've discussed your time at Guelph calling up the defense from 17 to 16 to 18, I believe it was.
Yeah. Hmm.
Pre-COVID feels like a lifetime ago.
I know.
And obviously just going back to that piece of the Jimmies and Joes versus just the X's and O's. But for a lot of folks, and without giving away any secrets, for a lot of folks seeing you take over, there's going to be a lot of questions as far as like, well, what's it going to look like? And that takes time. But in whatever way you feel comfortable sharing, like what's a bit of your philosophy as a defensive coordinator? Again, we know there's that piece on who you have on the field to be able to make the system work around them. But just when you go in the sort of front of the playbook stuff about what you want your guys to internalize and embody, what are some of those key things that you're trying to get across?
Yeah, no, I think at the end of the day, physicality. Physicality is going to trump a lot of stuff there. I'm not going to call the right play every single time, but I tell you what, if we're physical and we're running our butts to the football, it's going to make up for a lot of things. So I think when we talk about our defensive philosophy is we want to be physical, we want to be, relentless in our pursuit to the football. And I think that's going to overcome whatever play call, whatever offensive scheme is thrown at us. So if we can do those things, we can live to fight another day there. So those will be kind of the main things that we will constantly be harping on in terms of the pillars of our defense there. From a schematic standpoint, like I said, I'm trying to figure out the Jimmys and Joes elements, but I always kind of like to, make sure that we have answers to things that help take away, what is the offense really good at, and can we potentially, do things that affect those plays or do things that kind of get them off what they want to run there. So I think having built-in answers into your defensive playbook and defensive scheme, I think is important from a schematic standpoint, from also from me looking my players in the eye and letting them know that, yeah, we have an answer to this. So don't worry, like because there's tons of awesome stuff the offense is right now. So I think it's important that, like I said, to be have answers for them. I think if we can kind of create some uncertainty between the quarterback ultimately, and affecting the quarterback will be a big part of our game plan. And there's lots of ways you can do that. It's not just necessarily getting hits on them or anything like that. There's tons of ways you can affect the quarterback, but kind of creating uncertainty. And the thing that's kind of, I think, revolutionizing the game for us too is the use of the headsets. In terms of, I think if you had to look at last year being the first year that we were allowed to do that in the OUA, I haven't looked at the stats, but you can almost kind of tell offenses seem to be more efficient. I think because of probably the aids of these amazing offensive coordinators in the quarterback's ear. So that has to, from a defensive standpoint, we now have to counter that, and not just know that we're not just playing the game against the quarterback here. We're playing against the coordinator who's in the quarterback's ear. So what can we do defensively to help, if nothing else, kind of create some uncertainty? And like I said, I think there's a bunch of different ways you can do that, but I think, you know, a long story short of that, we I think need to be multiple in terms of our approach defensively. But like I said, it all comes down to if we can be physical and we run the football, we're gonna be in good shape. Doesn't matter what I call there. If the guys buy into that, we'll be in good shape regardless of the play call there.
Yeah. We talked about the quality of the game, the quality of all of these players that are continuously going forward. Obviously, the quality of the coaches from across the board when you're able to hire on full-time coaches and really vet and get quality coaches, I think that has raised as well. But then even past that, and something that Zach and I have touched on for a couple of years now, is the quality of quarterback from across the league has grown pretty significantly. I mean, you look at guys like Evan Hill, Keegan Hall, Taylor Elgersma. I mean, even some of the younger guys like your Marshall McCrae's, your Tristan Lefebvre's, now Elijah Barnes, and a list of other guys that we could name from every single school here. The quality of quarterback is going up and up and up. And both as fans and as former offensive linemen, Zach and I have loved it, but I'm sure it's been a nightmare for you as a defensive guy seeing these guys and seeing the growth of this. When you look at the quality of quarterback play and how it's risen to another level, how are you compensating your linebackers, not just your linebackers, but your defense in order to do that? Because just running a standard 4-3 defense and a cover two behind is not going to cut it anymore. You need to have a more of a schematic approach to this as well.
Yeah, and that's the challenging piece definitely right now as a defensive coordinator is how good these quarterbacks are playing. Probably leads to a lot of coordinators drinking more than they used to. But yeah, I think, and that just comes from a game plan piece of although they're all talented, they still have their strengths and weaknesses for the most part there, and it's trying to, I think, you need to tailor the game plan on what are the strengths and what are the weaknesses, and then match that with, well, what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses, and obviously try to hide as many weaknesses and emphasize as many strengths as you can do. But that's the awesome part I think about the OU right now is where the quarterback play is at. And like I said, dealing with 11 great coordinators, it's challenging. It's challenging, but at the same point, that's what makes this fun as well there too. So we know that, yeah, if in an ideal world that we would just all call that one defensive play that works, and but everyone would do it like that. And but you're right, Tom, that doesn't exist, So. And I think we're probably just going to keep on seeing quarterback play get better and better as we go along here. But that's kind of brings the fun in this too as a coordinator, like knowing that you have an elite challenge facing you on the weekend, and how can you best prepare your players to put them in as good a positions as possible to make a play and hopefully affect the game there.
Coach, last question I have for you, and again, going back to your first stint with Mac as a player, just simply, what's the coolest Jesse Lumsden story you got as far as on the field, whether it's in practice or a game, just something you saw where you're like, okay, yeah, this guy is very, very different.
Yeah, I'll probably give you a couple. The
Beautiful.
one like clear cut, it was an '03, and we're at Queens, and we had just given up like a 105-yard touchdown pass. We went plus one, just to hopefully win the game. And Tommy Dennison hit us for like 100 and whatever yard touchdown pass to go up um, by a touchdown. And there's like 30 some odd seconds left or something like that, and they're kicking off the ball to us, and they kick it deep. and they're kicking it to the other returner. Jesse's back there returning. They're kicking to the other returner. I think Jesse's in a real hero move calls that returner off, fields the ball, houses it, which is wild. This is at Kingston 2 and Old Richardson Stadium there too. He houses it. We forced to go to overtime. Mike Ray kicks a field goal to win it. So that was I wasn't dressed for the game, but I came up for the game and I was on the sideline like this guy's pretty special. So I think that was kind of a cool moment. Then probably the funniest thing I remember. So we're in first year there, running scout defense, and we have Kyle Koch is on our team as well. So Kyle, offensive line, great at McMaster, but he has a massive head, and we're doing I forget if it was inside running for his team or something like that, but at some point Jesse turns to Kyle and he wants to put on Kyle's helmet for the rep. And all while Greg didn't see the play call, so Greg didn't see this was happening, so Greg's calling the play. And then all of a sudden, Jesse's lined up and he has like this huge helmet on there. So it looks like Spaceballs, sharp helmet there. And he runs the ball and just like is, I think Greg, that was back when he laughed probably a bit less in practice. He laughs a lot now, but I think, but even him, he kind of thought that was very funny. But that was kind of a pretty funny moment in practice there too. And I think, definitely a very special player there, Jesse.
I love that so much. I guess the very last question that I'll have, and once again, Zach touched on it a little bit here, but when you have experience being a part of some of these championship teams, you then, especially as a fan base, as an alumni, as a coach, as a player, you hope and expect these teams to continue along that path of, we're fighting for Yates Cup, we're fighting for playoffs, and as history goes, unless you're wearing the Western purple, that's not always the case. There's dips and dives and everything else. Somehow Western keeps it going here. But certainly from this McMaster side of things, since that 2019 Yates Cup, the past few years there were ups and downs, and a lot more downs than ups. And it felt like this team was really underachieving for the most part until this past year, where they won, like I said, those jump ball moments and those 50-50s and everything else. From that side of things, obviously, you're going to understand this team a little bit better going into next week when you're starting with your kids and understanding what this defense kind of looks like. But in your coaching experience here, what goes into creating a winning culture, a winning attitude around a team? Because not just as a team itself, but around a defense. What's some of the game plans and the mindsets that you're trying to bring to this team in order to, like you said, try to instill that kind of mental toughness early on?
Yeah, no, all the successful teams I've been a part of, I think it is the culture. It has to start from the top down. So it's got to start from Coach Potasic, and it's got to filter through to the coaching staff, and ultimately through to the leaders on the team, and then through the rest of the players there. So I think if we're able and we're successful to set like that culture of we want to be a hardworking culture, an inclusive culture, but we also want to be able to have fun in doing it. I think those are important pieces there too, because like and making sure we don't lose that element of fun. Like, as you guys know, if I had to ask you guys, what do you remember most about your playing career? It might not be the what happened on the field, but it's definitely probably, I think, the locker room and your camaraderie with those guys and going through the tough moments. I think those things stick through. So I think if we can continue to develop a culture that is hardworking and work together as a group, and the tighter we are as a group, I think the more successful we'll be. Like I think I've been fortunate enough that both at Western and at Guelph and when I was at Mac, like it was a tight locker room. I think when a tight locker room, I think ultimately helps lead to successes on the field, because the guy next to you is going to work his butt off there. And I do think there just needs to be also the clear expectation of, we're making the playoffs. Like it's not, this is the standard. I know, we at Max celebrated making the playoffs last year, and I'm thinking, well, when I was there, this is the standard. I think it's making sure that we try to reset the standard there too of like this is the expectation we have, and the guys in the locker room, I think, knowing that that is the expectation, not in a negative pressure standpoint, but just like this is the work that you need to put in to make sure we get there, and that's what you owe it to the other 100 guys in the locker room there too, and that's what you owe it to the university. That's what you owe it to the alumni that came before you there as well, that come out to still watch the games, is that you're going to give everything you can to make sure that we get back to our standard, which is going to be the playoffs. And we ultimately, if we're in the spot we want to be in from a culture, we're constantly competing for provincial championships and then hopefully competing for national championships and getting us there too. But I think everyone's got to be pulling the same way. And I think it's just all from a culture and a mindset standpoint. I think making sure that we get the right guys in the locker room, I think that's an important piece to recruiting as well, making sure that everyone's pulling the same way. I think once you get that, to be honest, the wins and losses, you don't necessarily count them, but the wins somehow magically kind of happen when everyone's pulling the same way and everyone's working their butts off and everyone's having fun. The rest kind of takes care of itself, I think. And so that's hopefully what we're able to achieve at McMaster. I do think it's kind of been a bit of a rebound now in terms of where we're going to be at and hopefully where we can get to. I think with the guys that we have in the locker room, with the coaching staff, I know I'm very excited. I'm very excited to kind of see what these young men are capable of doing, and very excited to help see what element of the culture I can help bring, or kind of whatever I can do to help with the guys, bring them along with that, and be part of their journey as well.
Well, Coach, as Tom knows all too well, it'll be a cold day in hell when I root for McMaster, but I'm certainly pulling for you as someone who I'm very close with our time at Guelph, and just seeing all the great things you have done for our game here in Ontario. He is the new defensive coordinator for the McMaster Marauders football team, Coach Adam Grandy. Coach, thank you so much for joining us. It was an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, no, thank you guys. And like I said, kind of the beginning, thank you for all you guys do and continue to do to shed light on football in our province there and continue to develop it. So thank you guys. It's been great catching up, and I'm excited to see you guys in spring camp potentially, and then in the fall definitely. But thank you guys so much for what you guys are doing and continue to do.
Thank you so much, Coach. Well, that is a wrap on our McMaster exit meeting. Next week, we're heading back to the national capital to talk a little Ottawa GG's football. So that'll be in store for you next week right here at the 55.